My dearest Annie and Bidulph, what a long, long post it is. It takes 6 months or more to get an answer to any letter. How curious a hot Christmas day must seem. You fared better for your Christmas dinner than we did, for we were minus turkey, apricots and mulberries. Etta and I sat by the fire, as close to it as we could, for it was a bitterly cold day, and talked about former Christmas times when you were with us, and drank your health in some sherry which Mr. Boyce produced for the purpose. I will send you out the London news for this week by the Great Britain. You will have heard that war has at last been declared. We have sent a tremendously powerful fleet to the Baltic under Napier. I hope the war will be short and sharp, and that the Tsar will lose what he deserves, viz. Some of his ill-gotten territories. There are all sorts of opinions afloat, of course. Some say that Russia is too strong for us, but I don't believe a word of that. Punch says this week that the greatest comfort is that we are not fighting for the Bourbons, and we beat even in that bad cause, so I am sure we shall win this time, now that we are in the right. The people in general, with the exception of the hopelessly insane of the Peace Party, are quite enthusiastic for the war. I suppose you saw in the papers an account of the deputation of donkeys who entered Russia with the full expectation of doing what all the statesmen of Europe had failed in, namely bringing the Tsar to reason. He received them very civilly and sent them away as wise, or rather as foolish, as they came. I heard something the other day about a bill being brought in to prevent, in future, the English name being made a laughingstock of throughout Europe by the idiotic exertions of the Peace Society. It is time something should be done. The 26th is fixed upon as a day of national humiliation for the war. I hear the income tax is to be doubled, which will be unpleasant, but they must have money. The worst is for those who have relations in the fleet or army. April 23rd. We have been on several excursions since we came here. We went to Starcross last week by train and then walked across the Warren to Dawlish. I had not seen Dawlish since the time when we all spent a winter there 15 years ago. Amy and I walked up to Barton Terrace to see our old house there, and I rather think excited the suspicion of the inhabitants by standing and looking in at the windows, for an old lady came and asked us if she could direct us anywhere. I believe she thought we were looking for an eligible place to break in at. The railroad was not made either when I last saw Dawlish. It does not spoil it so much as I expected. The tunnels are rather picturesque. You ask when our friends' curiosity will be satisfied. I think they ought to be quite content if you write a public letter now and then, not every mail. I am going to send round the interesting one we got from you by the Harbinger. It is now gone to Aunt Pinchard. Then the Carrs and Buxtons and Sophie Henning will have it. Also Mary Ball and Mrs. Barlow. The latter has not seen an Australian letter for a long time, and she is always greatly interested in hearing about poor dear Annie, as she has always called you since you left England. I hope, Bidulph, you have found something to suit you long ere this. It seems rather an undertaking for both of you to take a farm, even if a small one, especially as neither of you are fit for hard work. You need not be afraid I shall think you extravagant, dear Annie. I am sure you will never be that. Of course you must have money to begin anything, but I am vexed that Bidulph should have to give £117 for £99 in cash. Of course, in a time of war, the funds must be low. If you take this farm, I cannot think how you will manage for furniture. You know there is a package of bedding at Mr. Buxton's office, though not much. I suppose you will send for it, and for your books, etc., if you really take the house and farm. April 24th. I was quite surprised at your account of the climate of Sydney. I thought that whatever else was objectionable, that was beautiful, but it must be far worse in England, and the country round Sydney must be frightful, but perhaps it is better in other parts. You say that it was beautiful round Wollongong, Bidulph, but there can be nothing anywhere like the green lanes and fields of England. The government gardens must be very pretty, but it is a great loss to have no country walks. I should think Bidulph fully appreciated the oysters. He used to be so fond of them. How I should like to spend a day under the trees with you both. You do not know how I long to see you again sometimes. You seem to have plenty of friends in Sydney and to be always out, but it must seem very strange to go out after tea. Perhaps the custom has been introduced in consideration of the high price of provisions. It is rather provoking that none of your evening dresses are of any use, Annie. I wish you had taken out others instead, but I dare say you will send for some things when we go out. April 26th. This is the fast day appointed in consequence of the war, but we are not all going to make ourselves ill by fasting all day, as we did on that memorable occasion at Taunton. Mr. Hugh Hedgeland, who was rather fond of eating, observed rather crossly when someone asked him if he was going to fast, that abstaining from food was no use, and that it was fasting in spirit that was meant. So that is exactly how we are going to fast, and bodily we are going to eat cold beef and bread and butter pudding. We took a long walk yesterday to Pinho, a pretty little church about 3 miles from here. Emily met with her usual misfortunes in the shoe line. The day we went to Dawlish she wore tight boots and could hardly walk at all, and yesterday she wore such old ones that they split all across and she had to walk with her toes on the stones all the way home, but luckily they are not the worse for it. I got a great many wildflowers and we have quite a nice bunch of them in the middle of the table. Tomorrow, if it is fine, we are going to Waddleston in a fly part of the way, and then to walk on to Newton St Agnes and home by train. Both old Mr Hedgeland and his son are going with us. In fact, the fly is chiefly for the benefit of the former. Mr Tucker, of an evening, sits up somewhere in a corner with his back to the light, looking the picture of misery, or else he walks up and down the room. I am always so sorry for him, although we cannot help laughing at him. Last evening I saw him take off his boots, warm his feet at the fire, and then put them on again, to the no small astonishment of Miss Hedgelands. I hardly know what Emily will do when we are gone and she is alone with him. It will be so dreadfully dismal for her. I do hope William Tucker will come and fetch him out to Sydney, for he will never go out unless he does. He cannot make up his mind to the exertion. And now, goodbye, Annie and Bidulph, and believe me, your ever affectionate sister, Rachel Henning.